Okay, so we're working on the Shema, which in this sitter started on page 91 or 90. And yesterday we worked on the two words Shema and Echad, and I mentioned at the end that the ayin of Shema and the dalet of Echad are larger than usual, which is not a mistake in the siddur. That's the way it is written in the actual Torah scroll. And I asked you to think about that. So of course you've all found, or you know on your own, that you put the two letters together and you get Eid, and Eid is a witness. And the idea, when you say Shema, you're giving testimony to the Achdus of the Bari, to monotheism, in the senses that we spoke about yesterday. But what is not very generally known is that you can reverse the letters also. And you reverse the letters, you get the word Da. And Da is a command to know. And the idea is, you should give testimony to things you know, not things you're guessing at or hypothesizing or theorizing or feel inclined towards or someone told me or so on and so on. And that means you have a responsibility to know. And this goes together with the idea of Shema meaning to understand that you're going to give testimony and you should be prepared. If someone asks you, what does it mean? How do you know? You have something to say. You should invest in analyzing the idea that's presented here. I forget where I heard that from, about 103 years ago, because I'm very old. Now, someone asked me yesterday, what about Hashem, our God? Everything I said yesterday was what you could call theology. Whether it's the philosophical idea that God is one in every possible dimension, and therefore no number other than one applies, so he can't be physical, you can't talk about him, and so forth and so on. Or the Kabbalistic idea that God's power is the only agency that makes things happen in the world. All of that is very philosophical. The third thing, which I said on the basis of linguistic analysis, that God creates the world out of mercy, and that implies a relationship that he wants each of us to succeed. That already made it into some kind of relational description. Elokeinu, our God, is the full-fledged statement of a relationship. And here, I mean, what I'm going to say now is obvious, but it's worthwhile just putting on record. You know, you have the phrase that some people use in English, the Jewish God, the Christian God, the Muslim God, and so forth and so on. That's nuts. There is only one creator of the universe. Jews, Christians, and Muslims don't live in different worlds with different creators. What you should mean is maybe the Jewish concept of God, the Christian concept of God, the Muslim concept of God. Those are different concepts. But the reality is certainly only one. Elokeinu means that the one creator of the universe has a special relationship with us. He's just as much the creator of the rest of the world as he is our creator, but he has a special relationship with us. He is so much the creator of the universe that our view is our Torah sets the responsibilities of everybody else in the world for what the Creator wants them to do. The idea that they have their religions and they have their own ideas and their own ways and their customs. The Rambam says it's forbidden for anyone to make up a religion for himself. It has to come from the Creator. Indeed, now that I'm thinking of it, the Rambam says that a non-Jew gets into the world to come if he keeps the mitzvos that the Torah requires of a non-Jew because they were commanded to the Jewish people by Moses. If he doesn't have that content in his mind, he doesn't make it. Just gives charity because he feels like it. or he gives charity because, I would say he gives charity, he keeps justice in. He does the things that the non-Jew is supposed to do. Because he believes that the Creator wants him to do it, that's not good enough. It's got to be because he understands that it was commanded through Moses. Now, that bothered me for many, many years. I've discussed it with many people, but at least it's occurring to me now that it fits together. The two things fit together. Because if he intuits that the Creator of the universe wants him to do it, he's making up his own religion. That's what he's doing. He happens by accident to get it right. These are, in fact, things that that the Creator wants him to do. But it doesn't mean it's not making up the religion. He's making it up because he didn't get it from the religion that exists. That would be a little step forward in understanding why the Rambam says what he says about a non-Jew, that he can only get into the world to come if he does the mitzvahs because Moses commanded them, because otherwise he's making up his own religion. I don't think it's a full explanation, but it's something. Until now I had nothing. Anyway, that's what Elokeinu is doing here. That the Shema is not only talking about abstract theology of how the world is run, it's talking about that fact that the Creator who makes the world and present tense and who runs it has a special relationship with us. And that idea, that special relationship, is very, very broadly brought in our literature. Okay, let's go on to the next page. Yahavta. We spoke yesterday about why you should love Hashem on the basis of the Shema, because if He creates us with mercy and wants us to succeed, and is creating us with certain means built in that we should succeed, that's a good reason. He's showing His love for us, and that's a good reason for us to respond with love. Here it says, you should love Hashem, our God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your resources, property. The first two are explained in the classical literature. With all your heart means you dedicate everything you do to God. Why are you buying that house? Why are you joining that athletic club? Why are you davening in this shul? And why are you going to that shir? Every one of them, the answer has to be because the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants me to. How do I know? Because He gave me a Torah, and I went to my teachers, and they explained the Torah to me, and I went to my Rabbi, and I told him my life conditions, and he said, with his knowledge of Torah and his understanding of me, this is what the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants me to do. The bottom line answer to everything you do is because the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants me to do it. And when you learn about the breadth of scope that the Torah takes in terms of what the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants, rest of recreation is included, and sleep is included, and eating is included, everything is included. But the bottom line answer is, B'chol Levavcha means everything you do is dedicated to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Chol Nafshecha means that when there are times that Kodesh Baruch Hu says you have to die rather than transgress the Torah, you're prepared to give up your life. And the Sforim explain that neither one implies the other. It's not redundant. You have people who, on a day-to-day basis, they can give you the reason, and they're honest, they mean it. The reason why they're doing things is because the Kodesh Baruch Hu wants them to do them down the line. But when someone puts a gun to his head and says, bow to the idol, he goes to pieces and he says, okay, I can't do that. I just can't do that. I can't die. I can dedicate my whole life to Kodesh Baruch Hu, but I can't die. The ability to say, yes, I'm willing to allow my life to end is a very big, unique kind of test. It's not something that you could pass several times, in training. This is something you do once, only once. And vice versa, this we know from the Spanish expulsion, there were people whose performance of mitzvos was choppy, like it is for most people, but when the Christians said, you have to pledge allegiance to Christianity, they said, this is where I draw the line. Maybe there are times when I wasn't so strict about Shabbos, and maybe I wasn't so strict about Kashrus, but Christianity, absolutely not. Kill me. I won't do that. So neither of these implies the other, and that's why it's important to have both of them on record. The puzzling feature here is loving God with all your property. Why isn't that redundant? If you already love God with all your heart and with all your soul, you're willing to die. And your bank account. Don't forget your bank account and your car and your books. It does sound anticlimactic. It does sound like it would be included in loving God with all your heart and with all your soul. It's a good question. I think you should ask other people also. I have an explanation. I wouldn't say it's the only explanation. My mother-in-law, Allah Shalom, lived through the 1929 stock market crash in America. And she told us the following observation that people made. As you probably know, some people, when they lost all their money, committed suicide. They jumped off buildings. The observation was made. That person who, in 1929, jumped off a building because he lost his money, so he ended his life. If earlier, in 1927, one of his children had died, would he have committed suicide? Have you ever heard of a parent committing suicide because the child died? I've never heard of that happening. That doesn't seem to happen.
There are cases that someone died out of sorrow.
That's something else. That's not committing suicide. Talking about a guy who jumped off a building. Now, second question. If you would ask that person in 1927, what do you love more, your money or your children? What would he say? He said, my children, of course. And he wouldn't be lying. He wouldn't be lying. But now ask yourself, in 1929, when he loses his money, he commits suicide. Is that good for his children? Are his children better off now? Not at all. They're much worse off. But you see, he can't live without his money. He could live if he lost a child, but he can't live without his money. So, what does he really love more? Sounds like he's certainly more dependent on the money than the children. So what happened? What happened is that the money that he has ate away his identity without his even knowing it, without his even appreciating it. When you ask him in 1927, what do you love more, your money or your children? He says his children. He's not lying. He thinks he's reporting correctly how he feels. But when he commits suicide in 1929 and leaves his children orphans, you see that it's not true. If he loved his children more, he wouldn't dream of committing suicide because he doesn't have his money. He has what he loves more. And he's committed to them. And he's responsible for them. Why should he commit suicide? Because he lost his money. It's not true. So money has a way of eating away your identity without your even knowing it. And I think that's one of the things that this verse implies. Make sure that you're serving God. You're loving God with your property. Don't take it for granted. Analyze yourself. And here are a few ways in which you can carry this out in practice. If you are in Israel, you come to Israel, take a look at how people live here. Go to families for Shabbos or other occasions. Take note of their material circumstances, their physical circumstances. Chances are, you know very well, that in the United States, no one would live like this. No, this is way below the poverty level. When I grew up, I remember what the psychologists were saying then. They change their minds every 10 years, which means you shouldn't trust them ever. Every child has to have his own bedroom. Every child has to have his own bedroom. How will he develop individuality and how will he be able to function on his own and autonomy and everything else? See, here, I know people who have 9 kids and they have 3 bedrooms. That's a lot. Could have been 2 bedrooms. 3 bedrooms, one for the parents. And if they're more or less evenly split, one for the boys and one for the girls. Or if they're not evenly split, they double them up. So it means 4 or 5 kids are sleeping in a room. My wife, Leanne, she has 14 children. Now, growing up, it was quite crowded. So she redivided her house in such a way as to create a small extra sleeping place. And then she said to one of the kids, I've made a place where you can have your own place to sleep. Why are you punishing me? Why should I be separated from all the other kids? I want to sleep with all the kids. I don't want to sleep by myself. So now, First of all, take a look at how people live here, and then ask yourself, would you imagine living that way in America? How would people look at you? What would people think? You're irresponsible. You're not giving your children a decent upbringing, and so forth and so on. So in America, you'd be working extra hours to pay rent on that bigger house, wouldn't you? Now, do you need that? Do you really need that? Well, in America, you might need it because you can't stand the social pressure. And that's a realistic consideration. But it's not built in, it's not genetic that you need it. It's not built into your brain cells that you need it. So maybe you have to think carefully about what it means to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all your money. And especially if one of the things you're earning money for is your social position. Maybe you should move to another place where they don't have the rolling hills of Muncie, you know? Maybe you should move to Spring Valley, which is a lower level of economics, so that you don't have to spend so much time earning the money, be able to keep up with the Joneses. So I think that's one message here. The message is, it's easy to lose your way. It's easy to think that you have to have when it's not true. In that case, you will not be really loving Kodesh Baruch Hu with all your resources. In that respect, it's not redundant. Okay. These words, which I am commanding you this day, should be on your heart. Now, just a little lesson in logic. Suppose somebody calls you up, somebody you haven't heard from in 10 years. And say, George, how nice to hear from you. Wow, we haven't spoken in 10 years. Tell me something. Where are you, George? And he says, I'm here. Yeah, well, wherever he is here for him, right? Even if he were in Timbuktu, he could say, I'm here, and it'd be true. The word here is what's called in philosophy an indexical, which indicates the place where you are when you're talking. So when you say, I'm here, that doesn't give me any information about when, where you are. Similarly, talking to somebody on the phone and say, I forgot my watch. Tell me, what time is it now? And he says, the time is now. Yeah, that's right. It certainly is, because whenever you're talking, now is when you're talking. But I want to know when it is on a clock. I don't want to know with the indexical. You say, the call comes in and say, who's calling, please? And he says, it's me. Yeah, it is. That's true. It certainly is me. But me doesn't tell me who you are. I want to know who you are, right? Moshe Rabbeinu says to Klal Yisrael, these words which I'm commanding you today. Yeah, of course. Today is the day in which you're talking. That's quite right. It is today. But so what? Everybody knows that. That's the indexical indicating the day in which you're talking. So it's got to be something more indicated by those words. So what Chazal say is, you should try to relate to these words as if you're hearing them the first time. And Moses gave them over for the first time. They'll be fresh and new and exciting and not something that you've heard or said already 1,000 times or 2,000 times or 10,000 times. You say the Shema twice a day. And some of us aficionados say it 4 times a day or 5 times a day. It's got to be fresh and new. That's one of the things they read into the idea of when he says, I'm telling you today, the reader later should say, it should be for me as if it was to them when they heard it for the first time. And this is a real challenge. We say certain texts over and over again, whether it's Shema or the Teffilah, and to keep it fresh and to keep it new and to keep it inspiring is quite a difficult challenge. And as I say over and over again, and I'm saying it again now, you should ask other people this question also, because this is a question of psychological techniques. I'm going to give you one. I'm sure there are others, and you can get much more information if you ask other people as well. One way to make the texts alive and engaging is to project yourself into the text. And in particular, project yourself in your present life and all the circumstances you're living under into the text. Let me give you one very simple, easy example. There's a blessing, we went through it in the Shema Esrei, where you're asking for health and wellness and recovery from sickness and so on and so on. That changes all the time because your state of health changes all the time. And then you're not only davening for yourself, you're davening for other people, the people who you know their state of health is davening all the time. Most people, when they come to that blessing, have a mental, some people speak out the extras that they put into the blessings, some people don't. My Rabbi taught us not to, but other people do speak it out. So it's either a physical or a mental list of people you go through in your mind and say, this one's sick with this, and this one's sick with this, and this one's sick with this. Please heal them. And that's going to change all the time. If you care about other people, those people are meaningful to you, important to you, when you have that in mind, you won't sleep during that blessing. You won't feel that blessing is boring because these people are sick and they need help and you're davening for them. So that's part of the idea of putting yourself into the blessing. Here, these words, we just read that you should love HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's say you say the words twice a day. One thing I recommend is think about, let's say it's 12 hours apart. Think about the last 12 hours. What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do for you in the last 12 hours? So at the very least you could feel a hakaras hatov, an appreciation of gratitude, and the appreciation of gratitude then can support the idea that HaKadosh Baruch Hu provided me with all this because he loves me, and then you can come to a love. If I say to Krishma in the evening, and I think, well, let's see, since I daven in the morning, say Krishma in the morning, I ate breakfast, and I'm healthy enough to eat and appreciate, and the food was good, and I benched for it. I learned with this chavrusa, with that chavrusa, and I spoke to people who need help, and I answered emails, and I gave tzedakah. I came here, I was outside, I appreciated the beauty of the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created. He did a lot. He did a lot for me. I exercised, which is true, I exercised today. I have the strength and the ability to exercise. I have a lot to be grateful for. So just when you say Shema, and you say V'ahavta, take 4 seconds. It's not a big investment of time to think, look at what happened in the last 12 hours. Then when it says I should love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's alive. It's not just something I said yesterday, because yesterday I said it on yesterday's 12 hours. And today I'm saying it on today's 12 hours. Put yourself into the words that you're saying. When you talk about God, the blessing of Re'inu Vanyenu, Riva Rivenu, fight our fight, fight our battle, and save us from our dangers. Wow, since the last month, that hasn't changed, that blessing? That blessing hasn't become alive for you? You don't think of those soldiers who are risking their lives every day? We have kabbanas, we have people who were killed and trying to protect the Klal Yisrael from their enemies. That blessing is alive. It's a poignant blessing. People are being shot at, right, as we talk. So put yourself into the text. Put your life into the text. That's one way to keep the text alive, meaningful. Okay, that's the word hayom. These words, which I command you this day, should be on your heart. You should now, vishinantam levanecha. How do they translate that? Teach them thoroughly. Actually, vishinantam has in it the idea of training, not just teaching. Your translator was sensitive to this. He didn't say just teach them. That's the lamed in Hebrew, not the shanein. Shanein can connote repetition. When you're repeating something, it's not just giving them the fact. You're drilling it in. And that's why, So it's really training them in these things, these words. Now, why is that emphasis here? What's the point of it here? Well, those of you, I'm speaking now to the people who are watching the video, in addition to the people in the room. Those of you who have children will already appreciate this, and those of you who don't, let me predict something about when you have children. When you have children and you're responsible for their growth and their development and their education and their training, your motivation will be, I want things to be good for them. And you'll use your experience to determine what's really good for a person's life. And you'll want that for them. I grew up a generation of people, of parents, either they were immigrants to America or they were children of immigrants. They had a very rough time establishing themselves, and many of them did not go to college. Every one of them was committed that children should go to college. Because they look around at them and they saw who had good lives, in particular who had the ability to earn money. If you went to college, you could earn a lot more money. And they scrimped and they saved and they sent their children to college. One of the tragedies was that at college they were taught to despise their parents. Criminal. The professors took advantage of us, and your parents didn't go to college and they don't know, and you know better, and you don't have to listen to them, and you don't have to follow their values, and so on and so on. It was just criminal. They took advantage of us. Did they know what they were talking about? Typically not. About what we should do with life, their political motivations, the fact that they were lefties even then. And okay, let's have a long rant on this, as you can imagine. So just as they felt, they looked around and they said, college gives you a basis for a much better life. Here, the Torah is saying, look at yourself. Look at what your life is based on. Look at what you treasure, what's precious to you. There's nothing more precious to you than Torah. Then train your children in that, because that way you'll be giving to your children the best that you can give to your children. That's part of what's going on. Now, speak of these things when you are sitting in your house and when you're going on the way, when you lie down to go to sleep, and when you get up in the morning. I hope it's obvious. It doesn't mean just these 4 times, or these 4 conditions, and other conditions are exempt. This is meant to be inclusive. Either you're at home, or you're not at home and you're traveling. I mean, that covers like almost all of life. And the two here are opposites. Your home is a place of security. Should be a place of physical security, emotional security, psychological security. The people at home with you should be people who are committed to you, committed to your welfare. Whether you're not young enough to be living with your parents and with your siblings, or whether you are living with other people who you're sharing with, or you're living with your own family, it's a place of maximum security. Whereas when you're on the way, you're maximally exposed. You're maximally vulnerable. So these words should be on your mind, and you speak of them when you're in a situation where you're at home and you're in maximal security, when you're on the way, when you're maximally insecure. The last thing that you go to sleep at night, and the first thing you think about when you get up in the morning, there should be, I would say, constant focus, awareness of these words. Now, the problem here, and it's a problem which would apply also in the previous, but I didn't bring it up there, is that it's not clear that to the beginner, it's not clear intuitively whether this is healthy. It sounds like you're a one-dimensional person. This is all you have in your mind. You have this and only this in your mind. What about the rest of life? Similarly, if you say you should love a God with all your heart, does that mean you don't have any room left for loving anybody else? So first of all, this can't be right, because one of the mitzvahs is to love other Jews. So if you thought loving God with all my heart means all my heart has to be devoted to God, so I have no room in my heart for anybody else, that can't be right. Because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself tells you to love the other Jews. So something's gone wrong. Something's gone wrong. And the same thing's true with the idea of being occupied or preoccupied. Are those the same? Occupied or preoccupied with the ideas and the words of Torah at all times, under all conditions. Would that mean to have no room to be occupied with anything else, focused on anything else, experiencing anything else, paying attention to anything else? So I want to explain to you that there are two different types of preoccupation or focus. Sometimes focusing on X means you can't focus on anything else. And sometimes it doesn't mean that. So for example, imagine a person, not saying you or me, but a person who's crossing the street and suddenly sees a Mack truck bearing down on him at 60 miles an hour. Well, he'll be focused on that all right, and he won't be focused on anything else, not tonight's football scores, and not how the stock market is doing, and not the present he's supposed to buy for his wife's birthday. No, he'll be thinking, it's get out or die. That focus crowds everything else out as it should. Because that way you'll galvanize your abilities to save your life. But other things aren't like that. Let's take, for example, you're engaged to be married, and the marriage is in 8 weeks, and you're preparing for the marriage. So you're hiring the hall, and hiring the band, and you're deciding which rabbi should be the Masada Kedusha, and who the guest should be, and so forth and so on. Now, when you're hiring the band, you go to talk to the band leader, you talk about the kind of music that you want, and what his experience is, and so forth and so on. Do you forget that this is for a wedding? I don't think so. You're hiring him for the wedding. But on the other hand, you're asking about his musical background and how many pieces he has and how much he's going to charge and until what time will he play. The fact that you're preparing for the wedding doesn't prevent you from negotiating intelligently with the band leader, does it? You're ordering the flowers. What kind of flowers? How many hours can they be there in the hot room and not wilt? And what kind of decoration should it be? Do you forget you're doing this for the wedding? No, you don't. The wedding is in your mind all the time, and because it's in your mind all the time, you also have room in your mind for the band, and for the flowers, and for the menu, and for the hall, and because that's part of acting out the wedding. So focus on the wedding doesn't prevent you from doing all these other things, whereas focus on avoiding the Mack truck does prevent you from thinking about anything else at all. It crowds out everything. So now you have to ask yourself whether loving God with all your heart or being preoccupied with words of Torah is like the Mack truck or it's like the wedding. What is it like? What kind of focus is it? The wedding, of course, and let me give you an example. Let's say you're married and you love your spouse. Now, another thing that you love is sunsets. Now you're sitting there and watching sunset with your spouse. Are you in trouble? I mean, you love your spouse and you love the sunset. But how can I love both? If my love is, and I love my sunset with my spouse with all my heart, how can I possibly love the sunset? I know, here's what I'll do. 1 minute for my spouse and 1 minute for the sunset, and I'll alternate minutes, because, the house can't hold two things at the same time. Below me. Because I love my spouse, when I sit and watch the sunset, I enjoy the sunset more because I'm sitting with my spouse whom I love. And it's because we share sunsets that we each love, that we love each other. The loves reinforce one another. They don't compete with one another for one's heart. You say, I only have one heart, I can't spend it in both places, I've got to alternate or whatever. No, they reinforce one another. So I never forget the love of my wife. I have it on my mind all the time. And because of that, the other things that I do have an extra added dimension because they're together with the love for my wife. The same thing is true of loving HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You can love HaKadosh Baruch Hu with all your heart all the time, and it doesn't crowd out other things. It includes the other things. So, for example, HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me I have to make a reasonable effort to earn a living. So when I'm making my effort to learn a living, my love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu isn't gone, absent, forgotten. Let's say I'm a surgeon. So I'm learning surgery. I have to learn the medicine and the technique. I'm doing surgery on a person and saving his limb or saving his life. What am I thinking about? I'm thinking about saving his life. Why am I thinking about saving his life? Because I love HaKadosh Baruch Hu and this is what he wants me to do. So it's not absent, it's not gone. So the love of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is compatible with other things which express that love by focusing my attention on those things also. Same thing is true with Torah. You know, the blessing we make in the morning about study of Torah, the literal word is la'asok b'divrei Torah. La'asok is not lilmod, la'lamed, la'havin, la'skil, liot chacham. It's none of that. La'asok means occupied. So my first wife asked the following question. It turns out the commentators agree with what she said. Let's say you're a businessman and you're negotiating a contract. And you're looking through the clause in the contract and you say, wait a second. This clause in the contract, I remember learning in the Choshen Mishpat, you can't do that. You can't put that in a contract. Let's call the Rav. Because it seems to me that the Shulchan Aruch says I can't do that. And you call the Rav and he says, well, you could do it this way, change the clause, write it this way or that way. So when I was negotiating the contract, was I osek b'divrei Torah? You bet I was. I want everything I do to be done the way the Torah wants me to do it. So that being the case, when I'm negotiating the contract, in the back of my mind is, what does the Torah say about negotiating this contract? So it's not crowding out everything else. The Torah itself wants me to earn a living, and the Torah tells me how to earn a living, and when I'm doing it with the consciousness that everything I do has to be done according to the way the Shulchan Aruch wants me to do it. So that's the idea that these things can be a constant preoccupation and don't have to be exclusive of other things. That's a very important piece of psychology, and it's a very important piece of understanding what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants from us. Okay, now it says, Ukshatam lo say, it should bind these words for a sign on your hand or arm, and they should be for totophos between your eyes, whatever totophos are. You should write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So first of all, let's try to figure out what this means. Bind these words on your hand. Well, listen, words are abstract. Words are not physical. Inscriptions are physical, but words aren't physical. So you can't bind words on your hand. That being the case, there's got to be some accompanying oral tradition to tell us how to perform this instruction. And left to your own devices, you would never dream of parchment and leather straps, and the boxes have to be black, and the straps have to be black on one side, but not the other side. Doesn't have to be black on the other side. And it's not clear, it's not even clear the boxes have to be black. The boxes could be white. Only the straps have to be black. And which words have to be written down, and how they have to be written down. All those things have to be communicated in oral tradition. That's number one. Number two, so I'm taking these words and I'm going to bind them on, write them on parchments and put them in boxes and strap them onto my hand and between your eyes. Where's that? You'd be forgiven if you thought, if you read this sentence, it has to be here. That's between your eyes, isn't it? That's what the Karaites do. But what they're ignorant of is that the oral tradition explains to you how to read the written tradition. And there's another place where between your eyes is written, and that is, don't make a bald spot between your eyes. Don't make a bald spot. Don't make it by shaving off the hair between your eyes. I think you notice for almost everybody, this is bald automatically, right? There's no hair growing here.
Most people.
Yeah, for almost everybody, right? So what it means is, between here means equidistant from. And this part of your forehead is equidistant from your two eyes. And here you have hair growing. So the prohibition there is for shaving off this part of your hair. Don't make a bald spot equidistant from your two eyes. And the word there is bain. So that if that's what it means there, then that's what it can mean here also when it talks about putting the tefillin bain enechem. It means equidistant from your two eyes. And that's why it's here. That's how you read the Torah Shebiksav. Thank you. Torah Shebiksav. That tells you how to understand the Torah Shebiksav. Okay, so that's where it goes. And then it goes on the doorpost. And that's what's you're being told to do. I think that there's a question here in terms of the paragraph as a whole. That this thing is upset with me because my blood sugar is going low. Okay, I heard you 6 times already. We talked about God's oneness, philosophically and Kabbalistically, and the fact that He creates the world with mercy. We talk about loving God, all your heart with all your soul. We talk about training your children in this. We talk about these words being fresh and new by putting yourself into the words. We talk about speaking about them and being constantly preoccupied with them. Wow. Big stuff. High stuff. High philosophically, high emotionally, right? And don't forget the parchments. Don't forget the leather straps and leather boxes. Don't forget putting it on your doorpost and your gates. Isn't that a little anticlimactic? Okay, they're mitzvos. Yeah, very good. Okay, right, good. They're mitzvos. But boy, oh boy, to be in context of monotheism and love and training your children and also leather straps and leather boxes, it seems at least anticlimactic. It seems like it's a big letdown from the rest of the paragraph. There ought to be something big here, something fundamental here, something, of massive spiritual importance, philosophical importance. And there is.
Preservation mechanism.
Sorry?
Preservation mechanism.
Preservation?
Mechanism. That is the importance to preserve the tradition.
Well, by what? By putting on the tefillin and putting on the mezuzah? Maybe, but that would be true for every mitzvah. That's true for all of the 613. We got them from Kodesh Baruch Hu, and we preserve them. So the first thing that people say, but what are the words that are in the tefillin? They're these words. So that means you're showing how precious these words are for you, that you wear these words on your arm, put them on there. Okay, I hear that. That certainly contributes. But there is, in fact, here a gigantic philosophical idea. What is the attitude of the Torah with all these great beliefs and commitments and love? What is the attitude of the Torah to the physical world? Is the physical world just a necessity? You have to eat and drink and sleep, otherwise you won't survive, so that you can meditate on high ideas and think about philosophical principles and fill your heart with love? Is the religion of the Torah a religion of thought and love? No. It's a religion of thought and love and myriad physical performances. Now, why is that? Why is that? Are the physical performances just a matter of reinforcing the thinking and the love? Is that all they are? So actually, read in a superficial and inappropriate way, you could think that maybe the Rambam holds that because of the last 6 of the guide, where he talks about the reasons for the commandments. But that is, I can't go into that now. I think that's a superficial and inappropriate way to read him. But certainly in the Kabbalistic tradition, there is a project of elevating the physical and making it spiritual. And that's the program of physical performances of the Torah is the program of elevating the physical and making it spiritual. And the symbol here is this, that your body, which is physical, can be made spiritual. And according to the Kabbalistic sources, that's a way to put the main project of the Torah, to take the physical and make it spiritual. And the most intimate expression of that is what you do with your own body. But then it spreads out. It can spread out to anything physical that you come in contact with, whether it's your home or whether it's your city, anything within the city gates, any physical thing that you have an interaction with, you have an opportunity to elevate it and make it holy. And that's a gigantic principle. We spoke about this, not in this year. Well, I forget now what I say to which group. But when you talk about Abraham and ask why he took money from Pharaoh and didn't take money from the king of Sodom, and one explanation is that what you do in the physical environment affects the physical environment. And although Egypt was not a moral and spiritual paradise, it did not reach the degradation of Sodom. And that being the case, Abraham said, the physical environment there can be recovered, recycled, rehabilitated, and therefore if I take the money from there, I can elevate it and make it spiritual. But in Sodom, that's impossible. The wickedness of Sodom had gotten to such a degree that the physical environment was polluted beyond repair. So now, what happened? Abraham didn't accept anything from it, and when the Kodesh Baruch Hu punished the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other three cities, not only did the people die, but the physical environment was destroyed, wasn't it? Why? Why wasn't it, like the verse of Mishlei says, the wicked accumulates property, and he dies, and the tzaddik inherits it? Why did the physical environment have to be destroyed? If these people are wicked, let them die, and let good people take it over. No, because their wickedness saturated the environment with evil to the point where the physical environment couldn't be elevated. And that's why the physical environment was destroyed. So here, what the Torah is telling you is, your body can be elevated, and your obligation to do that. And the physical environment, the whole city can be elevated, and we're responsibility to do that. And that's why you put something that has holiness. The tefillin and the mezuzah have holiness. You strap it on your arm, and put it on your head, and you put it on your doorposts and your gates to tell you all of this can be elevated. All of it is not just a compromise with the body, and the body's low and crude and degraded and animal, and you're really living in this world of the spirituality. Now religions divide on this basic principle. What is their attitude toward the physical world? And that's why there are some religions with practices of living on a mountaintop in isolation, or living in a cave in isolation, and not not having a family, God forbid, to live with other people, because then you have to earn money, and earning money means dealing with the physical world to create money and everything. No! Isolate yourself and spend your time meditating. Meditating is spiritual, and everything physical is not spiritual. I've had people tell me this in this year. I said to them, what's your attitude towards mud? Mud. Dirty mud. Dirty mud, yeah. But Kodesh Baruch Hu is creating it all the time, isn't he? He's not divorcing himself from the mud. So if the highest spirituality is be like the Creator, you shouldn't divorce yourself from the mud either. No. He's creating it. It has to have a purpose. Same thing is true with the body. Same thing is true with all your physical resources. To regret them and feel that they're degraded and cut yourself, think that they're only temptations to drag you down, and the goal is to cut yourself off from them as much as possible, is to deny the Creator. Yeah.
Do we have some exposure to the elevation?
To what?
To the elevation.
Do we have some exposure?
Can we see it, sense it, recognize it, or or beyond our?
Well, it's expressed in halacha. Let's put it that way. I don't call you when you talk about seeing it or sensing it. For example, when you make an animal into a carbon, it's holy, and it has certain special restrictions to what you can do with it, because it has become holy. That's
so it's elevated because it said so. So we don't have any beyond that it said so. We don't have any other ways to.
I would say there is, but you have to, you can see it in the character of human beings. People who have succeeded in doing this lead exquisite lives. You look at what some of the things they do and you think, boy, I could never do that. But if I did it, I'd be a much better person. And someone said, the only way in which Darwin could have thought that people are evolved from animals is because he never met Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. If he had met Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, he would know right away. There's no connection. They couldn't possibly have been. He couldn't possibly have been evolved from an animal. Because the gap between him and animals is just so enormous. It's too big a gap to cross, just by gradual evolution. So I think you could see it in human beings. Other than that, no, you can't see. It doesn't glow in the dark. It's not radioactive that you could test with a.
When you mean see it in human beings, you mean like when you mean like a gadol, or there are other.
Or a tzaddik, people who will behave as a tzaddik behaves. I'll tell you one short story which illustrates this in one way. So a man had a very sick son, and he went to the Chafetz Chaim. And the Chafetz Chaim said, there's a doctor in such and such a city, quite a distant city, and he has a cure for this disease. So it took him like weeks by train to get there. He gets there and he finds the doctor gives him the medicine, and he comes back and he treats his son, and his son recovers. And the Chafetz Chaim said, don't ever tell the story to anybody. Fine. 10 years later, the son is fine, he's getting married, and he figured, what the it's thankful to the Chafetz Chaim that he saved his son's life, and so on and so on. Told the story. Immediately, the son got sick, and got sicker and sicker, until finally he had no choice. He went back to the Chafetz Chaim, and he said, I know you told me not to tell the story, and I made a mistake, and I told the story, and he's sick again. Chafetz Chaim said, I fasted for your son 40 days. I'm not strong enough to do that now. I can't do it again. And he died. Meaning, he sent it to the doctor to cover it up. It was just a cover up. The doctor didn't know, and the medicine didn't do anything. It had nothing to do with it. He fasted for him for 40 days, but he didn't want him to know. Why should he know? He didn't want him to be thankful. He didn't want it to be publicized that he was able to do that by fasting for somebody. He did it because that was his way of curing him. An intelligent chimpanzee wouldn't do that. An intelligent chimpanzee would not do that. Right. Here's where you can see an elevation. He's not doing it for ego. He's not doing it for gratitude. He's not doing it for publicity. And had the father followed his instruction, no one would have ever known about it. No one would have ever known about it. That's a level of tzidkus that, it's beyond what the physical would give you. Yeah.
So somehow I want to understand better the idea with the tefillin is that is it like to through our actions to make holy our bodies, like that's kind of the symbolism with the
That's
Yalecha?
right. That's right. And it means it's a symbol of all the things you do with your body, which can affect elevate the body, and that's one gigantic part of what we're doing in the world, is to do that for the body, because that's prepared for Olam Haba. There's a whole long thing of that in the Ramchal. If you want to see that short, in the Derech Hashem, in the back of some editions, there's something called Ma'amar al Hikarim, essay on fundamentals, which is a summary of the Derech Hashem plus other things that he put in there. But you can, if I remember correctly, you can see it in there. Okay.
Thank you.
My pleasure.